right, good morning everybody. Thanks for following along. I'm actually going to start work on the car finally, after having the car delivered in mid-December. But anyway, the first thing I'm going to attempt to do is to modify the gas tank. So I'm going to explain a little bit about why I'm doing this. And once again, this is, I'm a beginner builder, so I'm documenting this build like a beginner, like somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, because it's that's pretty accurate as far as my knowledge of building these systems. But anyway, this is the project. So here's the gas tank, and this car, technically is a race car, and I would like to make it more of a street car. And the gas tank itself is set up to be a road racing car. So here's the gas tank. This hole on the top is where the fuel sender goes, and the fuel sender is a device that sends a signal to your fuel gauge, so you know how much fuel you have. And then there are a few outlets, so I'll try to get a view of them. So we have one outlet on the bottom, then we have two on the top. And the way the kit is set up, you would normally connect that bottom hole to a cutoff valve, and then a valve to a fuel filter, like a 100 micron fuel filter, then to a low pressure fuel pump that pumps fuel into the top of this little can here called a swirl tank. And it basically, we have a small pump that empties the gas from the fuel tank and fills up that little can. And the idea is, when you're on a road course and the car is, going around a turn, and all the fuel sloshes to one side of the fuel tank, when you have the fuel captive in a little can like that, it has nowhere to go. So the low pressure pump feeds that little fuel swirl tank, keeps that filled. Then there's a second high pressure fuel pump that takes the fuel out of the swirl tank, sends it through another filter, then through something called the regulator, then into the engine. So there's a couple issues with that. First off, it's complicated. It's a lot of components. It's expensive. I mean, it's probably minimum $1,000 to buy all the components to set up a swirl tank properly. And then you're moving the fuel around a lot. The fuel goes through two pumps. It goes into the regulator, and then whatever excess fuel is not used by the engine gets returned to the swirl tank, and then actually gets returned to the fuel tank. So it tends to heat up the fuel a lot. The engine, from what I understand, can go into vapor lock if it's really not set up properly. So it's a pretty complicated setup, and it also takes a lot of room. And you really don't have a lot of room back here for all the plumbing for the engine. So I'm going to use a stock fuel pump. So here's a Camaro fuel pump. And the interesting thing about this is it has a float. This thing is the fuel regulator. Inside here is the fuel filter. And then this can itself acts as the swirl pot. So the fuel pump basically collects fuel and fills it into the little pot with that hole with the triangle there, and it fills it up. And then there's another inlet where you can run a tube to the far side of the gas tank, so that if you're going around a turn, it can continue to fill the little tank up with fuel, so you don't get fuel starvation. So this is one little handy unit. It's about $175, $180. And then you connect this to a little computer box, and that computer box connects to the main computer box that controls the engine. And when the engine needs more fuel, it speeds the pump up. When it needs less fuel, it slows it down. So it's a quiet solution. It's a reliable solution because it's made by General Motors, and it's also going to save a lot of room, because what I'm going to do is cut this section of the tank out, and then I'm going to mount the fuel pump, if you can see, sort of in the tank. and that'll keep this whole area open for the emissions equipment that I'm going to put in there. So anyway, hopefully that all made sense. You know, I'll post another video after I cut the tank up, and you'll get a better idea of what I'm trying to do. Thanks. Bye.